Imagine being told the exact date and time you're going to die. The clock is ticking, every second louder than the last. For one death row inmate, the final 24 hours weren't just about fear, regret, or faith. They were about sending a message. And that message? It came in the form of food. His last meal didn't just stun the prison staff. It went viral, triggered debates, and left millions of people across the world wondering, why would anyone choose that? He had been silent for years, no interviews, no public statements, just cold, calculated stillness behind thick iron bars. But in those final hours, he made a decision that would echo far beyond the execution chamber. Guards said he was calm, too calm, as if he had been planning this moment all along. The final request was handed in, and when the kitchen staff saw it, they froze. It wasn't something they'd seen before. It wasn't even food. At least not in the traditional sense. It was symbolic, deep, disturbing. Outside, protesters gathered. Some called him a monster, others called him misunderstood. But no one, absolutely no one, expected what he was about to do next. The warden approved the meal. The kitchen obeyed. The tray was prepped. Time was running out. The world didn't know it yet, but it was about to witness one of the most chilling, talked about final meals in execution history. The door creaked open at 5:42 a.m. A cold wind passed through the hallway of death row, even though there were no windows. Every guard on shift stood taller that morning, silent and tense. It wasn't a regular day. This was the last day of his life. He knew it. They knew it. And somehow, everyone felt like something was off. The inmate had been awake long before they came, sitting on the edge of his steel-framed bed, staring at the wall. No movement, no blinking, just a stillness that disturbed even the most hardened officers. One guard would later say, "It was like he was already gone, like his soul left before we even walked in." They read him the schedule, final walk, spiritual visit, last statement, and of course, the meal. He nodded slowly, not saying a word. No anger, no regret. Just a deep, hollow acceptance. But beneath the silence, something was boiling. It wasn't fear. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Like he was holding back a secret he'd take to the grave, or reveal with his last act. They led him down the corridor, shackled but proud. Step after step, every echo of his boots reminded everyone around him. This wasn't just a routine execution. There was tension in the air, like a storm about to hit. Outside the prison, the sun hadn't risen yet. Protesters had already gathered with candles and signs. Some begged for mercy. Others demanded justice. But inside these walls, time was ticking mercilessly. He sat in the visitation room one last time. No family came. No priest, no tears, just a prison chaplain who offered him scripture, which he politely declined. When asked if he wanted to say anything to the victim's family, he paused, looked up, and then whispered, "They'll understand after tonight." What did he mean? No one knew, not then. They asked him again about the meal. Was he sure? Did he want to change anything? He smirked slightly and said, "Serve it cold." That sentence alone would go on to haunt the kitchen staff and the warden forever. Because what he requested wasn't just a plate of food. It was a message, a chilling symbol of what he believed, or what he wanted the world to believe about him. The meal was prepared in silence. Guards watched the tray being placed in front of him. Cameras rolled. This was protocol, but as he picked up the spoon, everyone watching realized this wasn't just the end of a man. It was the beginning of a story that would go viral, debated across the internet, news stations, and dinner tables worldwide. And the strangest part? He still hadn't said what it meant. He picked up the spoon slowly, not with the hesitation of a man about to die, but with the precision of someone performing a ritual. The camera zoomed in slightly. His hands were steady. Too steady. No trembling, no fear. That alone sent chills down the spines of the guards watching. On the metal tray in front of him sat the last meal he had personally requested. A single, half-melted scoop of vanilla ice cream, a glass of cold water, and, most shocking of all, a raw onion with the skin still on. No steak, no fried chicken, no chocolate cake like so many others had asked before him. No indulgence, just simplicity and madness. Why would a man choose this? What was he trying to say? At first, prison officials thought he had misunderstood the rules, but when they asked again, he insisted, raw onion. Ice cream, cold water, nothing else. He peeled the onion slowly with his fingers, ignoring the tears that naturally welled up in his eyes. But he wasn't crying. No emotion. Just a dead stare into nothingness. Then, he bit into it like an apple, crunching, chewing, swallowing, and repeating. The room was dead silent. Some of the guards had to look away, others held back nausea. It wasn't just strange, it was disturbing. Then came the ice cream. He took one spoon, just one, then set it back down, didn't touch it again. The water? Left untouched. It wasn't about nourishment. It wasn't about comfort. It was about meaning. The world wouldn't find out about his meal until hours later. But when they did, it exploded. News outlets ran headlines like, "Death row inmate eats raw onion before execution. Internet loses its mind." Was this the most disturbing final meal in history? Psychologists break down the message behind the onion. People speculated endlessly. Some claimed it was a metaphor, that life is bitter, layered, and ends in tears. Others said it was mockery, that he wanted the world to feel disturbed, just like his victims had. Some conspiracy theorists even claimed it was an ancient symbol from secret societies, a final act of coded rebellion. Within 24 hours, the hashtag #RawOnion trended across Twitter and X. TikTok creators reenacted the moment. YouTubers created breakdowns of the meal. Prison officials were overwhelmed with media requests. The man was gone, executed at 9:17 p.m. by lethal injection, but his meal remained etched into global consciousness like a ghost that refused to fade. Inmate 52103's name might have been forgotten in a decade, but the onion, the ice cream, the cold glass of water, immortalized. Some psychologists claimed he was mentally ill, that the meal was a result of decades of isolation. Others believed he knew exactly what he was doing, using the final meal as a form of control in a world that had stripped everything else from him. Whatever the truth was, the act worked. It overshadowed his crimes, clouded the narrative, and turned a murderer into a myth. The internet didn't care about the victims. They cared about the story, the twist, the symbolism. He wanted to shock the world, and he did. All with a spoon, a scoop, and a tearless bite into a raw onion. Long before the headlines, long before the onion, there was blood. It was a quiet town, the kind where people still left their doors unlocked, where neighbors waved across lawns, where crime was something they watched on TV, not something they feared next door. Until he came. He wasn't a monster at first, at least not the kind that people recognize. He was polite, smart, kept to himself, worked at a small hardware store, never raised his voice, never made a scene. But underneath that calm exterior was a storm of darkness that no one saw coming, until it was too late. His first victim was only discovered because of the smell. A neighbor reported a foul odor coming from the apartment next door. Police arrived expecting a dead animal. What they found was unspeakable. A woman, 34 years old, gagged, bound, and lifeless. Her eyes still open, her wrists bruised, and next to her body, a single onion placed on the floor. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing stolen. It didn't make sense, and it wouldn't be the last. 2 months later, another victim. Same city, Same pattern, same haunting onion. The press called him the cry maker, because every scene ended in tears, both literally and emotionally. No connection between the victims, no clear motive, just brutal, personal, calculated violence. He wasn't killing out of passion, he was performing, leaving behind a signature, like a twisted artist painting with blood. The manhunt took over a year. Dozens of suspects, hundreds of tips, but no solid leads. And then, he made a mistake. A surveillance camera at a gas station caught a glimpse of his license plate. The footage showed him buying ice cream, calm, casual, right after his third murder. That small detail, ice cream after a killing, would later haunt everyone who read his story. It wasn't just what he ate before death. It was what he ate after causing it. When police raided his home, they found a journal, dozens of pages filled with drawings of eyes, onions, clocks, and spoons. No full sentences, just fragments, like, "She didn't cry, I had to make her. Peel it back, peel it all back. They'll understand when I'm gone." The trial was fast. The evidence was overwhelming. DNA matched. The journal sealed the deal. No confession, no apologies, just silence. And that eerie smirk, like he knew something the world didn't. The families of the victims sat in court every day. Some prayed, others stared him down, but he never looked back, not once. Not even when the judge sentenced him to death, as if it meant nothing, as if he had planned it all along. And maybe he had, because in the end, when the world looked back at his story, they didn't talk about the victims. They talked about the meal, the onion, the message, the man who turned his execution into a twisted stage. The execution chamber was freezing, not because of the temperature, but because of the weight in the air. Every person in that room, from the warden to the youngest guard, felt it, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. This wasn't just another execution. This was history being made, whether they liked it or not. He walked in without needing help. No resistance, no last-minute breakdown. As if he'd rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000 times. He laid down on the gurney, eyes wide open, and stared directly at the bright ceiling lights above him. The straps were tightened, one around each wrist, one across his chest, and finally, one at the ankles. A chaplain leaned in, whispering a final prayer. He didn't respond. He turned his head slightly toward the glass, where the witnesses sat in silence behind bulletproof glass. Victims' families, journalists, activists, everyone waiting for a single sentence. The warden asked, "Do you have any final words?" The room fell into absolute stillness. He cleared his throat. Then, in a calm, clear voice, he said, "You all wanted tears, but the onion didn't work on me. Maybe it will on you." Gasps. One of the witnesses broke down sobbing instantly. Another covered her mouth in shock. That was it. That was the message. Cold, poetic, twisted. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't confessing. He was challenging the world to feel something. And he used food, a raw, bitter onion, as the weapon. The injection began. First, the sedative, then the paralytic, and finally, the agent that stopped his heart. Within seconds, his eyes closed. His chest stopped rising. 9:17 p.m., official time of death. But outside the prison, the chaos was just beginning. The internet exploded. His final words, "You all wanted tears," spread like wildfire. Every major outlet carried the story. TikTokers and YouTubers analyzed the line like it was a riddle. Memes, theories, think pieces, all flooded timelines. Was he insane or a genius in manipulation? Psychologists debated for days. Some argued he was a textbook narcissist, using performance to control the narrative even in death. Others believed it was something deeper, that the meal, the silence, the onion, it all reflected years of internal torment expressed through symbols rather than words. But while the internet raged in fascination, the families of his victims sat in the shadows, ignored, pushed aside in favor of a more interesting headline. One mother, speaking to a small local outlet, said, "He got what he wanted, the world's attention, but my daughter still sleeps underground, and no one's trending her name." The cruelty wasn't just in his crimes. It was in how he rewrote his ending, stealing the spotlight one final time. It worked. Schools debated it. Podcasts broke it down. College psychology classes assigned essays about the symbolism of a death row meal. Meanwhile, those who had lost everything got nothing but silence. The prison later revealed that they were considering changing final meal policies, restricting symbolic items like raw foods or strange requests. But it was too late. The story had already etched itself into true crime history. And somewhere, buried beneath 6 feet of dirt, lay a man who died without tears, yet made the world cry in ways it never expected.